Well, and welcome to this week's show. My special guest is Bruce Cotterill. Bruce is from New Zealand and has actually written a book which we're going to talk about a little bit later in the show. Bruce, welcome to the show and welcome to Australia.
Thank you, Kevin.
Bruce is, as you can probably tell from the accent, he's from New Zealand. We've got a good audience in New Zealand too.
Good.
Yeah, very good. So, okay, welcome to the show. Let me tell you firstly what we've got coming up in today's show. Big Brother is watching, so you better be careful about that. New Zealand investors help first-time buyers. We can get to a take on that one, Bruce. WA off the plan boost. Happy wife, happy life. Now, there's an old saying. You and I are both very familiar with that one.
I agree with it too.
Well, yes, the best way to have a good marriage, I think. And get well in Australia. We're going to come back in just a moment with those stories and lots more chatter too. We'll tell you about Bruce's book as well. Back in just a minute.
Did you know you can save up to 70% on your staff costs by outsourcing the low-value, repeatable tasks so your team can focus on growing your business? Beepo is an outsourcing provider focused on the real estate industry. With an English-speaking, tertiary qualified and fully trained team in the Philippines, Beepo will give your business the boost it needs to start growing and returning value to you. For more information, visit beepo.com.au.
Welcome back to the show. My special guest this week is Bruce Cotterill. Bruce is an author, well-known speaker around the world, also helps businesses grow, prosper.
Grow, improve, performance, all of the above, really.
Yeah. And Bruce's book, a fabulous read. I'll tell you how you can get it and tell you a little bit more about it in the show too, but The Best Leaders Don't Shout. Is that like shout in the pub, or is that shout as in?
It's shout as in yell at your people. You know, our people, workplaces have changed a lot over the last, particularly 5 or 6 years probably, but even over the last decade, the workplace has changed, and as a result, the role of the manager and the leader has changed a lot too. So, we're all familiar with those old war movies of the sergeant major standing 2 inches away from the private's face, shouting at the new recruit. And that stuff doesn't work anymore, particularly with the people in our workplaces today.
Yeah, it's like the way we do things around here. This is how we do things.
That's right.
It's all changed.
Changed
we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Let's go to story number 1. This one comes to us from H&M. Big Brother is watching. This is to do with Airbnb, Bruce, and this interesting story, I picked up on this because about 190,000 hosts listing properties via the online short-term portal accommodation Airbnb have been handed over to the Australian Taxation Office. So all of your files, if you're leasing through Airbnb, and I've got to say, a lot of people that I've spoken to just see it as income or bonus income. And you wonder how many people have either not declared it or only declared portion of it. So they're in for a bit of a shock.
Yeah, I think they are. I think there's, logic tells me there's a healthy percentage of people who haven't declared it. It's a little bit like house rentals, particularly in the old days before the Inland Revenue departments of the world got on top of that. And I guess my reaction to it is it's a legitimate taxable income, and so you'd expect the tax office to do whatever they can to trap that, and it's in a way it's no different to employees' records are available to the tax office to make sure that people are paying the appropriate level of tax. Yeah. And so it's an extension of that. And I don't really see it as an overly Big Brother matter. However, if all of a sudden the tax office were using facial recognition technology and watching you outside the front door conducting discussions, I'd say then they've probably gone a step too far.
Yeah, and I think too there's other elements to this as well, and that is people who use Airbnb but don't necessarily declare that to the lender, to the bank. So I think all of these things you need to be aware of when you're going to change how you're using a property or an asset like that. You need to let all the relevant people know and do it properly.
Yep, it's a legitimate taxable activity. So you'd expect the tax office to use whatever means they can.
Of course.
And as I said, my issues with privacy and Big Brother are more where Big Brother's getting in the way of the stuff that you're legitimately doing in a private capacity that's none of anybody's business. And we are seeing little snippets of that creeping into society in parts of the world, and that's a bigger concern to me.
Okay, we'll take you to story number 2 in just a moment. Before we do, I want to remind you that Real Estate Talk is out tomorrow as normal. In the show this week, we're looking at new home sales and how they've bounced back. We've got a story about Santa's property present coming up to Christmas and a warning to the property industry. This comes from one of the industry heavyweights, and he's talking about portals that have been set up to suggest to you that they're actually going to find the best agent. But this warning is not so much to consumers, it's actually to the industry. I thought you might be interested in that. That's coming out in Real Estate Talk, that is out tomorrow. Okay, to story number 2 now. This one comes from Stuff, which is a great site. We've used this site in the past for stories. It's out of New Zealand, and this story is New Zealand based. It's about how New Zealand investors are helping first-time buyers. Scroll down, read the story, but your take on this one?
Yeah, well, I must admit I hadn't caught it in the news until you'd mentioned it to me, Kevin. But my first reaction, to be honest, was, oh, that could be a good idea. And then once I'd thought about it for a couple of minutes, probably, I thought, oh, that's really fraught with challenges.
Yeah, well, the essence of the story, of course, is that investors are going to mentor first-time buyers or first-time buyers as to how they should get into the property market, both as a buyer but also as an investor. So I think a lot of things that you've got to be wary of in that.
Yeah, well, space. It looks like what they're encouraging, or New Zealand, a new New Zealand company is set up to encourage investors with enough for a 20% deposit can create an opportunity where first home buyers can buy a home, and the first home buyer becomes responsible for the 80% debt, and somehow they jointly share the capital growth and so on that goes with it. My first reaction was, well, if an investor's got 20%, why wouldn't they do it by themselves? But then the next thing I thought of is all the basic stuff around maintenance of the property, looking after the property. We know that a property that's been well looked after is going to grow in value quicker and better than a property that isn't. Renovations and all those sort of things. So it sounds like a minefield to me.
Yeah, and the other thing too is the best way to wreck a friendship is to go into partnership.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
so you've got to be very careful who you go into partnership.
So baby steps, I think, for that one, Kevin. I think that's got it's got some challenges.
It's a nice idea, but I think it needs to be researched a little bit more.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
Okay, story number 3 comes out of Western Australia. This is a story about the West Australian state government. I'm always worried when governments stick their nose in to make a situation better for someone. They normally always make it worse. But here's where they say they've listened to calls from the property industry bodies, and they've introduced a substantial tax duty rebate for off-the-plan apartment purchases. Now, off the plan to me it's copping a big hiding right now, because people think they're going to buy an off-the-plan apartment, make a fortune. The old days of flicking it before completion, well, they're well and truly gone.
Yeah, those days are gone.
And you've got to understand that you're paying a developer's margin as well in these purchases.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the West Australian market probably needs all the help it can get right now. So for the state government to step in and do something positive, I think that's extremely positive. And on this particular one, it sounds to me like a restoration of fairness. And we know that the typical age group of the first home buyers, second home buyers, apartment buyers, they are actually people with an overwhelming sense of fairness. Yeah. So I think it'll get a good response, and it should help the WA market.
Going to come back in just a minute. We're going to take you on an interesting tour around New Zealand while we've got Bruce with us, and we'll look at what properties you can buy in New Zealand, what price ranges, but also a really interesting story about happy wife, happy life. And we'll tell you more about that when we come back. So back in just a minute.
Your business card is a vital selling tool and a constant visual reminder of who you are, what you do, and more importantly, how you can be contacted. Introducing our new Velvet business cards, featuring a luxurious premium laminate that has a velvet texture and is soft to the touch. Printed on a resilient 450 GSM card, these cards can be printed with a range of spot gloss and foiling options to give your office that prestigious look.
Welcome back to the show. The old saying, happy wife, happy life, really rings true. I've actually been to auctions where the auctioneer has said, you know, appealing to the male bidder, you know, don't miss out on this because it's a long trip home with a cranky wife. And I think you've got to be careful when you're buying property that you're really consulting with the better half. This story is about someone, I think he's from the States actually.
Yeah, it is. It's American.
Yeah, he purchased a property in New Zealand, paid several $1 million for it too. So you can imagine it's a pretty good property, to find out that his wife didn't like it. Can you understand that?
Well, I can understand it, but I can't comprehend doing it myself.
Comprehend.
I think we all get into positions where we make investment decisions, whether it's a family home or a holiday place or an investment property, and there might be a bit of a chat between husband and wife as to whether or not it's the right thing, and one party might sort of be a bit more aggressive on how good an opportunity it is than the other, but logic tells you that the two of you eventually get there and you navigate your way to an outcome that both agree with. So the concept of actually buying a property without my wife knowing about it and then trying to talk her into it over the following 10 years is a little bit foreign to me, to be honest.
Very foreign indeed. I thought I might take the opportunity also to talk about the New Zealand market, the New Zealand property market, because there is a saying, and you and I discussed this last night, about everything south of the Bombay Hills doesn't exist. I mean, the New Zealand market is predominantly about Auckland, but it's now stretched down, you were saying last night,
Yeah,
it's
it has.
more Taupo North.
Absolutely. I think as property prices have surged over the last decade since the GFC, you know, we all went through that flat spot after the GFC, and then the hockey stick kicked up over the last 5 years, and property prices have really taken off. And that's driven a lot of potential Auckland home buyers outside of Auckland to some of the provincial regions, and areas such as Tauranga, Hamilton, south of Auckland, and then Whangarei, north of Auckland, have seen terrific growth in values of their property market as a result of that.
We found a really interesting video in this article actually that takes us on a bit of a tour around New Zealand, what you can buy, what you can expect to pay for a property in different parts of New Zealand. So Steph, if we can just roll that video now and we'll come back after that.
How much do you think this view is worth? Well, for those with front row seats, they're paying up to $11 million. Even houses just a few streets back can fetch for well over $5 million. Head just a few suburbs west, away from the harbour, and prices aren't so steep. Kiwis love a view, whether it be in inner city Auckland, Lake Wanaka or the Coromandel. In fact, a view of the water can add hundreds of thousands, even millions of dollars to the value of your property. When valuing two similar pieces of property, location is king and everything else is secondary. This Wellington view could cost you around $3 million. Queenstown's picturesque lake and mountains will cost you around $1.5 million. Taupo's waterfront will set you back the same as Queenstown. And looking at Auckland's skyline from Devonport will set you back $2.5 million. So, if you're wanting a view for your next property, you'll have to fork out some serious coin.
Welcome back. Interesting that look around New Zealand. Property's still very affordable there, but in some of those areas paying well over $1 million for property around Taupo and places like that.
Yeah, Taupo. There's really a triangle north of Taupo, which obviously encompasses Tauranga, Hamilton, Auckland, and the north. It's where the warmer weather is, of course, and it's where probably, off the top of my head, 60% of the New Zealand population is. So that's where the jobs are, that's where the activity is, it's where the summer weather is, and of course that all drives people's decisions around housing.
I've been back there on a couple of occasions, back to Christchurch. I was there prior to the quakes, and then I went back after. How's that market recovering now?
Well, it's been slow. I think you only have to have seen the damage that was done by the two earthquakes to form a view that it was going to take a long time for the city to recover. I think the reality is it's taken longer, and it's an ongoing process. And when the city's finally finished, we'll probably be all sitting down and say, well, isn't it amazing that took 20 years? So the city's better today than it was yesterday, and it'll be better tomorrow. But it has been a long, slow process for the city. So you've still got roads that aren't quite right, and you've got vacant sites where buildings once were, and all of those sort of things, and it's taking time for the new city to emerge.
Yeah. Last story comes from QT, and this is about getting well in Australia. Australia's been earmarked as the third biggest global market for wellness real estate, behind the USA and China. I remember when Australia and New Zealand were being promoted as the safe destinations, and people were looking at those destinations for holidays and also purchasing property. The shift now away from that to wellness. We're seeing a lot of this in a lot of industries as well, concern about staff and wellness.
Absolutely. Well, it's the new flavour of the month, really, isn't it? Wellness, and I think it's come about as a result of a whole lot of things. Not the least of which, I think, on the back of the Me Too movement, Black Lives Matter, and some of those other things that we saw 3 or 4 years ago. That's all resulted really in an environment where people have people are happy to talk up. It's a lot more acceptable now to put your hand up and say, I need help. And wellness is a logical sort of flow on from that change in society. And obviously it's the topic of the month in the workplace, and it's extending into the homes, the places we live, the environments around our homes, the social services, the activities, and so on and so forth. So to me, it's just another step in the same direction.
Our guest has been Bruce Cotterill. This is Bruce's book, The Best Leaders Don't Shout. The background to this, you gave us a bit of an insight right at the start there, but this is really your learnings over many, many years of working with some pretty top-line companies.
Yeah, it's a people often ask me how long did it take to write the book, and I say 30 years, and that's true. It's a summary of experiences, which in my case include 5 CEO roles, and mostly dealing with companies that were under pressure in some way, shape, or form. And the processes that you go through and the things you learn about, and inevitably what comes out of the thinking that goes with those sort of roles is the simple things that you have to do to fix a broken business, or to hold on to your key people, or to manage millennials better, or any of those other things. So it's a book designed for people running their own business, or working in an organisation, in a corporate organisation, or it could be the principal of a school. Anybody that's leading a team and wanting to do things a little bit better than they were doing before.
Yeah, I know, as you mentioned there, you've had several CEO roles, and you're still working with a lot of key companies as well.
Sure.
Just let me ask you about business. Does business change industry to industry, or is business business?
Well, I think every industry has its sort of slight differences, but really people are people, and I don't think there's too many businesses around nowadays that aren't what I call people businesses. I mean, products are easy to copy. It's very hard to make product a differentiator nowadays, but how you lead your people, how engaged your people are, the permission they feel they have to add value to your business, those are the things that make a difference to the way organisations run now. And I think that's a big part of the similarity across different industry types.
Bruce, thanks for your time today.
You're welcome.
My guest has been Bruce Cotterill, and that book again, there it is. Make sure you pick it up, have a read of it. It's absolutely fabulous. A reminder too that Real Estate Talk is out tomorrow. Our auction update is out later today as well. And all of these shows, of course, available for you as we broadcast them, or in our library at propertytv.io. I'm Kevin Turner. I look forward to seeing you next time.